Both of your industries are also male dominated, but also traditionally white, you know, in terms of like people who have access to those industries, you know, are usually affluent, male or white. So how important do you think like visibility and representation is? And do you create work with the understanding that you're contributing to some kind of like visibility for Black women?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think as a stylist, you know, there's the ways that I've learned how to style has obviously been through like, you know, visual research and stuff, looking at a lot of Instagram pages, you know, subscribing to a lot of different food magazines like from around the world and stuff. And yeah, it's very much an industry led by white people. Like you also said, you know, like in terms of getting opportunities from white people and stuff. I don't take that away from, you know, like my journey, but at the same time, I've been going through this thing of trying to, you know, involve more of my personal identity in the food that I make and stuff, and embracing the other ways that I'm creative as well, you know, and embracing like, you know, my Blackness in the way that I make food. And also it's just like such a weird thing, you know, in food, because as a Black person, you know, growing up, the types of things that we used to eat versus the types of things we can afford to eat now that we have, you know, credit cards and salaries and stuff, you know, people attribute that type of food to whiteness, you know, and it's like, how could you racially attribute something that grows out of the ground and is supposed to be available for everyone, you know? So I think that what's very important for me right now, like a point that I'm trying to make, is that good food, there's no class distinction, and when we want to associate things with whiteness, we're often putting a class distinction there for ourselves as Black people. And I think that one of the things that are really important to me right now is making good food accessible to everyone, you know? So yeah, I guess that's my role right now.
Okay. That was a question that I was going to ask later, but since you got there, accessibility, you know, I think that's a big talking point in terms of like the creative industry and the industry as a whole, you know. So for me, with your photography, accessibility sometimes presents itself in the sense that if someone doesn't know like what to look for in a good picture, they could go to a gallery and be like, okay, that's a simple picture or that's a dumb picture, you know what I mean? Because they don't have the knowledge, and so they don't have the space to appreciate, you know what I mean? But that's largely because of accessibility. So I know you shoot on your phone sometimes as well, but you also shoot like things that people are able to relate to. So like everyday street photography, things that people know and see. How do you think we can make photography and visual art and the industry as a whole like more accessible to Black people?
It begins with curiosity to a certain degree. You know, so some people, they might have access to such things, but they're not that curious. But as well, I think maybe just taking our surroundings and turning them into art spaces where we normally hang out, you know, and say, oh, okay, we can use the space in a different way. We can showcase our works and stuff like that. I mean, I know Andile Pewa, at some point in time, we had like the back room thing, which I thought was awesome. I mean, the space is not intimidating in the sense, because sometimes you see a gallery and it's like there's big walls and stuff like that, and you're scared to go in, you know? Even if you go in, it's like, you're scared to ask. It's just how we use a space.
I mean, you spoke about it a little bit, but like, what does accessibility in the food industry look like?
I'm at a stage where, you know, that question is only kind of recently started to be asked, you know, and I think for me, accessibility would look like, for example, okay, there's this market that happens in Vosloorus. I can't remember what it's called, but I've been there a few times, but I can't remember what it's called. Something about sporos, something. Yeah, that's it. So, I was there and I was just looking at, you know, what everyone was making and stuff, and there were like really good food offerings there, but, you know, I realized that a lot of the people that are vendors there are kind of they're operating from a place of, you know, this is kind of all they know, or they're not really trained cooks. And, you know, I thought about maybe hosting workshops for people like this, you know, to kind of sharpen their skills and also find better ways of just presenting their food businesses as a whole. I think making that type of knowledge accessible, because people are always like, how do you get into Taste magazine? And it's like, that's such a weird question. Like, I don't even know how to help you with that. But, you know, like, I think the first step is to kind of create something, you know, like outstanding, you know. I think it's important to kind of be able to transfer the skills that you have. You know, we often feel helpless in spaces where, you know, we need to help our people and stuff, and I feel like I think everyone in this room, actually, not just us, you know, we all have like a special skill that we've been put here to perform or whatever, and it's important for us to like transfer the knowledge, you know. Yeah. It's really important in whatever way.
Let's talk about the actual work, right? So, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows Nonzuzo's work, but Carbon Copy for me was my first introduction to you and your sister and the work that you did. But I know you also did some stuff recently with Prince of Newtown, I think.
A bit.
Yeah. So maybe talk to us about some of the projects that you've done, including Carbon Copy, what you're working on right now, and just like the aesthetic that you're trying to define and the kind of photographer that you're kind of being.
Carbon Copy was a project I did with my twin sister, and basically that was just to explore our relationship as twins. You know, you grow up together, people always looking at the other, who's better, who's whatever, you know, and somehow there's insecurities that you deal with and stuff like that, you know. So it was just a way of understanding our relationship and sort of like making peace with things we can't change, and just like appreciating the bond that we have, you know, because being twins is quite special to a certain degree. So yes, and basically the work is very simple, shot on a tripod, natural light. It was shot over a couple of days, like maybe 2 days. And yeah, I just like work that is not very perfect. So natural light, imperfections, a lot of contrast with some of the pictures, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And then I like a lot of street stuff. Joburg for me is a city that excites me. It's dangerous, it's beautiful, it's not perfect, you know. If you walk around the city, there's so much that you can see in just one place. And I think the work that I am working on, it's an ongoing series. It's just work that focuses on women. So it's just finding a way of presenting the work in a respectable way, I guess, because a lot of it is nudes. So it's hard because some people, you shoot them, they're comfortable with you taking the picture, then you look at the work and it's a bit overwhelming, you know. Then it's like, I don't look perfect, I've got folds, stretch marks and stuff like that, you know. And then you have to just rework it until people are comfortable.
That's about like some of the different projects that you've tried to be a part of or that you've created, and what were you trying to do with each of them?
Okay, well, I mean, the restaurant in PE, you know, I was just inspired by the fact that there was really not a lot of, you know, creative spaces to hang out in PE. I was living there at a time before all of this, before like all this, this culture came flooding into PE, you know, before there were like black skateboarders and stuff, you know. So, I did this with my mom, you know, like I had her support, so we found this space in a place much like Yeovil, you know, like a place in PE called Central. And yeah, so we found this little space, and we just kind of ran this restaurant straight from the kitchen. We were like the cooks and the waiters and the cleaners, and it was just the two of us, and it got really popular, but unfortunately, because we're not really business people, we ended up going bankrupt. We had to close it. And then, in Pretoria, I kind of tried to recreate something along those lines, but that one was a lot more open to whoever, you know, could come through and have dinner. It was like a pop-up concept, but we would do it in existing establishments, you know, in terms of trying to keep our overheads lower and stuff. So that was off-the-wall pop-up restaurant. And yeah, like more recently, like I've just been doing a lot of freelance work. I've just been styling for some magazines, mostly for Woolworths Taste, and then like I've just been doing some writing for Eat Out, a little bit of food journalism there. And I think that because it's something that's always been on my mind, even before I knew how to express it, and I mean I'm still learning the language, you know, to express these things. It's access to good food for everyone has always just been something that's been a big part of my life, and I'm just trying to find a way to, you know, facilitate that.
Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left. I'm sure you're relieved. You're both women. I don't know, what do you think about it? Do you identify as feminist? How do you navigate the city, the industry as a woman, outside of your immediate professions, but like just in your actual body?
In terms of navigating the city, for me, I don't know, I walk around the city and I'm scared, you know, like half the time. But it depends where I am, you know. There's certain places I go to and I'm comfortable. And then there's certain places I go to and I'd be uneasy just because it would be the look that someone gives me or something, you know. And sometimes I hate that, you know, because sometimes you judge people by the way they dressed or the way, you know, they don't fit the typical profile of what a good person is or something like that, you know. And like recently I got robbed by someone who looked decent, you know, someone who was dressed nicely, was sitting at a restaurant and having coffee and, you know, and they asked to use my phone and they disappeared, you know. And you look at those things, you know, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much paranoia that you carry with you and all that stuff, and something like that happens, you know, and you're like, okay, what should happen, you know, like, do I look at the next person and not talk to them and get to know them just because I'm scared of what will happen or whatever. So such things, they make me uncomfortable, so I don't know.
It's so hard now to identify as feminist. It's not as easy as it was in like 2015 because of what kind of not so nice things have come out of this movement in terms of there's been like a very specific type of classism within women of color, and like this exclusionary kind of language as well that's being used in these circles and stuff. And for me, that was always kind of the thing that made me feel like I'd rather not identify with feminism if, you know, we're gonna kind of pit ourselves against each other in terms of, you know, fundeka ngakanani wena, and it's been a hard thing for me to just thoroughly identify with. I think for me personally, feminism, what it looks like now is just basically, you know, being a woman in the way that makes you feel most comfortable, you know what I mean? And it's about you, it's not about what feminists have said you're allowed to do now, you know? I think that women kind of know what they're doing, you know, they don't need this type of guidance. It's annoying. Yeah, and I mean, you know, moving through the city, I'm pretty new here in Joburg. I've spent most of my Gauteng time in Pretoria, and like Josie is a different city, and you know, moving around here, you learn very quickly that you have to be careful who you trust, especially as a woman, especially as a black person. You have to be careful what times you are in certain places, you know. Josie will teach you the ways in which you can be smart very, very quickly. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for coming. Looking forward to like this, being out there, but also to like more work. I know you're leaving, but you know, don't be a stranger. Please give it up, guys.
Did it go, go, go.